Today in this Carl's Q&A, we are going to be talking about something that is very important to your golf simulator setup, and that is ambient lighting. So let's hop right into it with our very first question, which is, what kind of projector should I consider if I know that I'll have a bit of ambient light in my space? So in general, the more ambient light you have in the space, the brighter you are going to want your projector's output to be. So brighter space, you want more lumens. Generally, that will mean for the projectors that we offer, you're going to want to look at a laser projector, because laser projectors usually have a higher lumen output than other types. You also need to consider your screen size, because again, the larger the screen, the brighter you want the projector to be, whereas if you have maybe a smaller screen, then you can get away with something that doesn't have quite as high of a lumen count. And that's something where we've got some online tools on our website that will show you, how far away a projector needs to be positioned and how bright that image would be on the screen as you're projecting. But in general, if you know you're going to have quite a bit of ambient light in the space, my usual recommendation is to find something that has a higher lumen output, even if it means you're going with something that's maybe a 1080p over a 4K. Because if it's too much ambient light and you have a nice 4K projector, but it doesn't have that lumen output, well, the image is going to just get washed out on the screen, so you won't be able to see it anyways. Our next question is, can you have too little ambient light in the space? Yeah, you can. It can be too dark in a space because, first of all, you need to be able to see what you're doing. If you go up to address the golf ball and it's totally black, you're not going to be able to see what you're swinging at and you'll be tripping over things. So you need to have at least some ambient light in the space. Other things to consider are your launch monitor. Some launch monitors need to be able to see your swing and be able to see that golf ball in flight, so having some ambient light in the space is going to help them out with that. Likewise, if you're using swing cameras, obviously if it's black, just totally dark in the space, your swing camera isn't going to be able to see you swing, so you won't be getting the benefit of having that nice swing camera sitting there watching your swing. So really, you don't want too little ambient light in the area. Kind of the key is you want to be able to control that ambient light that you have in the space. Usually what I would recommend is getting lights on a dimmer, because that way you can increase the light, you can decrease the light, you can really fine tune and find a good kind of middle ground for having some ambient light in the space, but not so much that it's washing out your screen. And speaking of controllable lights, our next question, we kind of get into that a little bit more as well. How do I get better blacks on my screen? It looks washed out. Really, the key thing is, again, control that ambient light in the space. One of the big things that we see is sometimes people have windows in the area. Try to black those out as much as you can, because if you have sunlight pouring into the room, and a lot of light on that screen, no matter how bright your projector is, that image is still going to get washed out. Things like our golf room curtains, our back cover kits for our enclosure setups are all great ways to try to limit the amount of ambient light getting to your screen. And then again, controllable light in the space. I always recommend, if you're doing a golf sim room, put your lights on dimmers and make sure that the lights that you're selecting are appropriate for the space. You don't want big floodlights that are going to cover the entire room in light. Usually like a spotlight or a can light that's shining right down onto the ground, not towards your screen, is going to be a good option. Overall, if you are going to have ambient light in the space and you can't black everything out and maybe your lights aren't positioned just perfectly, consider looking at a gray screen. That's why we developed that. That's what it's for. It's for a space that has that ambient light. A gray screen is going to help combat that a little bit, and it's going to give you a better image quality on the screen than a white screen will in a situation that has more ambient light. And if you do have control over the ambient light in the space, a gray screen can still help to get you those really nice dark black colors on the screen. So if that's something that concerns you, a gray screen would be an option to consider. So our next question is, I don't feel like my launch monitor is reading the shots correctly. Is that because of too much ambient light? It's definitely a possibility. Ambient light can affect how your launch monitor reads. I think we mentioned it earlier. If it's too dark in the space, some launch monitors aren't going to be able to see the shot. There's also ambient light that you might not be able to see. A lot of the overhead launch monitors use infrared lighting to look down at the golf ball. So if you have another source of infrared lights in that space pointed towards your golf ball, that could potentially interfere with what your launch monitor sees. So things like security cameras with night vision, motion detection, even some audio systems run on IR. So those are just all things that you want to consider that could possibly be interfering with the reading in your space. Also, something that we've seen is potential issues with hitting mat. Hitting mats, depending on how they are reflecting the light, can potentially interfere, again, with your, especially overhead or camera-based launch monitors, being able to see that swing and see that shot. So if you've got a really shiny or reflective hitting mat, something that you might want to consider swapping out for something that doesn't reflect that light quite as much. Another effective way to combat that is by calibrating your launch monitor. Make sure you've got everything set up as it's going to be set up when you are actually using it, and then run through the calibration process on that launch monitor, and it will take into account the lighting in the space and make adjustments so that it can see your swing. And the next question is it better to have my room painted a certain color? So the color that you have your room painted can definitely affect things as far as the image quality on the screen. If you've got a space that's painted a really light color, the light in the space kind of reflects around and will eventually get onto your screen. If you've got an area that's painted black, the light isn't going to bounce. That's going to get absorbed by that paint and help to darken the screen and overall get you a better image quality. You also need to consider the area behind the screen. Impact screens, when you shine a projector onto it, light is filtering through that screen, and if you have a light surface behind your screen, that's going to reflect right back onto it and, again, potentially affect the image quality. So using something like a back cover kit on one of our enclosures or just painting the area behind the screen black is going to help to combat that. And it's not just the walls and ceiling in the space, your flooring can also make a difference. If you have like light carpeting, if you have like cement floors, light is going to reflect off of that. So putting some sort of turf down is going to really help to absorb that light bouncing around and help improve that image quality on the screen. If you really want to absorb as much ambient light as you possibly can, you might want to consider looking at black turf to put down. That's available, and that's going to really help to cut down on the ambient light that you have in your space. As you're looking for lighting in the space, we recommend trying to find something that has directional lighting. Sometimes they'll have like the beam angle listed on the packaging, and usually doing something with a narrower beam angle is going to give you less ambient light actually getting up towards your screen. So that was it for our questions today on ambient light in your golf simulator setup. If you have any questions, please let us know in the comments below, and we will see you in the next one.